Hey, what's up, everybody? I recently flew to New York to take part in Omacon 2026, which is a brand new conference. And it all got started because DHH made Omarchy, which is a Linux distribution. If you haven't seen it before, I have another video on it. You can check it out. It only takes 2 minutes to install, and it's like a great distribution in terms of ergonomics and efficiency, and is like perfect for developers. All of 37 Signals runs it, and there's like tens of thousands of developers that are running it now. Super exciting. And this was a conference built around that. The theme around the conference is that the vibes around Linux are changing. So this isn't the normal Linux experience where you have people arguing and bike shedding and they're all on the command line and you can't understand anything. It's nothing like that at all. This is about style, it's about ergonomics, it's about efficiency and innovation, and that was the whole focus. And you could really get that from just all of the presentations and the people there. And so Omacon is described as, for one day, we're gathering the builders, the early adopters, and anyone else who refuses to accept that's just how Linux works and looks. The ones who are willing to reimagine what an OS made for people who love computers could be, and who together converted droves of new people from Windows and Mac into the Omarchy world, restoring the year of Linux desktop to a prophecy, not just a joke. And so I flew in and I got a hotel near Radio City Music Hall, and then I took the subway down to the Shopify offices. Now, I will say that I made a video on traveling to Boston with a ThinkPad, and I still had my ThinkPad with me. However, on the New York City subways during a Friday, they are very busy, and there was no way I could actually use my laptop on the ThinkPad, so it was totally packed. Didn't really get to use it, but later on in the day, it did clear out a little bit, and you could use it on the subway if you wanted to. Another interesting thing I noticed while I was in New York, and I'll talk about this later, is that there was a lot more device diversity. So when I was in Boston, I saw a whole lot of Apple devices and nothing else. In New York, I saw all sorts of devices. I saw Android and Windows and a whole lot of Linux just due to what I was doing. But there's a lot of devices there. It's not like just a monoculture. And as we talk about Omacon, I also brought a Samsung S26 Ultra. I have this OtterBox case on here. I like it. I don't have to worry about dropping or anything. However, it does make the phone huge. So it's massive. It's really even hard to tell. I have like an iPhone here, and you can see there's a huge size difference there. So you might want to get a thinner case. However, I like the drop resistance, and it's not a problem for me. My pockets are big enough. All the videos you'll see I shot here are from my S26 Ultra, other than this shot you're getting right now, which is my normal Sony camera. And so when I arrived there, I didn't really know what to expect. And it turned out there was actually a line all around the corner. So tons of people lined up, ready to get in. And everybody in the line was super friendly. I met a lot of cool people, and I got to kind of talk to them all day. The unique thing about the conference is that these are all people who would fly across the country just to hang out and talk about cool things. And they were very intelligent and could think on their feet, and you could just kind of share ideas, and people could riff on that and share their ideas and collaborate. And so the whole vibe was very, very nice. There's a lot of alpha in that crowd, basically. If you could like hire all those people into a company, they would make great things. And they mostly were, because you had people who were CTOs, and you had people running startups, and you had experienced engineers at FANG companies and Fortune 500s and all that. The whole array of people with just lots of different experiences, and all very successful. But we all had a passion for sovereign computing, or basically computers that we can create and change ourselves, which necessarily means something like Linux, where we can actually change whatever we want any day, and then we can just do it like instantly. And that was the first talk of the day also, as DHH kicked off the keynote, and he talked about personal computing in terms of like, personal computing used to mean personal, and this is not what he said, but this is kind of what me paraphrasing is I think of it like an Apple keyboard. You can get an Apple keyboard, but they all look the same. And one of the beauties of customizing computers and things is that you can have keyboards with colors, and they can look different, and they can feel different, and they have all these different styles. And so when you're talking about this monoculture of just like one vendor, it really kind of sucks the creativity out, and it almost feels like a dystopian sci-fi thing where like, oh, we're going to go to a tech meetup and every single person has a MacBook. And it's like, what is this? Are we all like robots? Do we think for ourselves? Does everybody just need a MacBook? Like, do I need a uniform when I wear a MacBook? Do I need like an Apple uniform and all that? And so this was all about the personal computer, where we all have slightly different setups because it is personal and we're doing our own things day to day. And so why not just tune it to make that work for us? And that was really what I loved. And he gave a lot of cool examples there, just talking about craftsmanship with things like cars and watches. And it was a really great talk. And I should also add that the entire conference is online. So they were streaming it all, and you can check that out. And I'll put the link below if you want to check it too. I definitely recommend it if you have some time, just put it on the background or whatever and listen. I really enjoyed being there in person, and it still holds up on YouTube. And speaking of DHH, I actually got to talk to him one-on-one along with a lot of other people. And he is super friendly, he's open, he's kind, and he's really great at just listening to ideas and then sharing his thoughts on them. And I was just shocked because it wasn't one of those things where like anybody's pretentious or there's some sort of like leveling system that you're not in on. Everybody was cool. And that included all the people who weren't DHH. And so what was interesting is because like not everybody like makes YouTube videos or posts blog entries, etc. But they have amazing ideas. And so I met a whole bunch of people like Zigmu and a bunch of people I was kind of sitting next to in my little area. And everybody had this shared passion, which I really liked. I saw a cool framework laptop, for example, with the transparent keys. That was awesome, and a whole kind of mini demo of that. And I met another person who flew in from Germany, and they were telling me about their JavaScript journeys and all that. And so it was just a great group of people, and we could all just really relate with a bunch of topics, not even just Linux, just like a whole array of things. And it was really enjoyable to forge those bonds, and now we're all staying in touch. So I have all sorts of friends on X now and Discord, and hopefully if you did see me there and we're not in touch, like, yeah, reach out to me through the video. I definitely want to stay in touch. After the DHH talk, Toby from Shopify answered some questions about like how he thinks about AI and stuff. And he mentioned some of his tools, which I actually really like. Like he has a knowledge database, and I'll link to that below if you're interested. And then he also was just very approachable. So I got to talk to Toby after the talk. And again, you could just like walk up and be like, hey, I'm Steve, how are you? And it was really great to kind of have those conversations and just see everybody just be totally open and approachable, even though obviously he's the CEO of Shopify, so he's got a whole lot going on. But he made time for the group, and he really was interested in what people said too. So these were all like two-way conversations. They weren't just people giving their opinion. They're very open to new ideas and just collaborating on them and building on them, which was really nice. After that, Bjarne came up and he talked all about theming. And so he showed how easy it was. And he has these tools like Aether and stuff. So you can just basically make a theme nearly instantly. Like if you have an image, you can just point, click, boom, theme. And then he showed some of the technical details about how to customize these or change them or tweak colors. And there's some very sophisticated tools that will like make sure that you can actually change colors that make them all match together so that it's not like very contrasty and things like that. Whereas like if I made a theme from scratch, it'd be the worst theme ever because I have no taste. And so these tools really help with like, oh, let me get a color palette that looks good. And it was surprisingly interesting talk because I've never made a theme, but just seeing how easy it was, it's like you and I could make a theme in less than 5 minutes. And it doesn't matter who you are and if you're watching this right now and you never ran Linux, you could make a Linux theme if you just run these tools. It's super easy. After that, we had TypCraft up, and TypCraft has some of the best tutorials I've ever seen. I know he has the great Ruby on Rails ones, and there's some Tmux ones, and he does have some Omarchy videos and stuff. And so he's a great instructor and educator, and he's a very creative person. And so he made an Omarchy demo where basically he pre-recorded himself talking, but then he linked everything he said into the OS without touching the keyboard or anything. So what he would do is he would say something, and then because it's Linux and because it's Omarchy, everything is extensible and you can just like programmatically call things. And so he was showing you how to like type and do things, but again, he wasn't touching it. It was just happening to his computer. And so it was a really neat way to think about things. And I think he put that together with like MPV and some other things, and he showed us how he did it. And it's kind of the future of like, what would computing be if like you could just orchestrate everything? And so I really thought there was a lot of possibilities introduced there, and I'm looking forward to seeing more from him also, just because he is a great educator, but I think it's kind of understated just how creative he is. And he also obviously does really good with like things like aesthetics and stuff. So everything he does looks amazing too. And this was also the case here. And I got to meet him in person, and he was also super nice. That's kind of the theme for this. There was nobody who was not nice. Everybody was really cool. And after TypCraft, we had TJ on, and TJ had a presentation where he was actually making functions in NeoVim using AI and basically saying like there's this new workflow where like you can make AI just make a function by giving it a function name, and 9 times out of 10 that's gonna just work, and you don't actually need to read the code or anything, which you could take at your own peril. But the fact is that it actually does work. And for like trivial things, you could look over the code real quick, and it's just going to be a different world in terms of like higher level abstractions, because as we all know as like engineers, they say it's turtles all the way down. And so it's like, oh, right now we're already building on top of Omarchy, which is building on Hyprland, and Hyprland's building on Wayland. And then there's also the actual Arch Linux base, and there's the Linux kernel, and there's the driver. And you can imagine there's all these layers of abstraction. And that's almost all of computer science, right? Is like finding a better abstraction to do more without having to type everything out explicitly across that whole stack, right? Like very few times are we ever going down into assembly language. It's all about the abstractions. TJ also had a glorious Arch Linux sweater, and I think I should also plug terminal.shop because they have the coffee where you can order from SSH, and they gave us a free bag, which is really cool. And I think you can get the sweater from them. I'm not sure. Either way, it looked beautiful, and he was also very personable, very fast thinker in person. He speaks quickly and kind of can really riff on things and just dynamically introduce ideas. And so I really enjoyed that whole conversation. We also had the creator of Hyprland on, and his talk was really interesting because he talked about like, he makes Hyprland for the users. And so if you want a feature, etc., just go to GitHub and thumbs up the issues, etc., and show him that there's demand for it, because he makes Hyprland for people. And so as long as he sees that there's like some demand signal and it fits within the scope and the purpose of Hyprland, he is like totally driven on that, just making the users happy. And so it's kind of like a perception that you don't always get in Linux, right? Like normally in Linux, you're like, oh, I think there should be an X button here. And then some maintainers like, there shall not be an X button because that violates the HID guidelines established in the Tome of Knowledge of 1997 or something. And you get this ridiculous explanation of sort of fantasy, right? Well, he's focused on the users. And that was great because it's kind of undersold, but Hyprland is just one of the fastest and best desktop environments ever created. It is so fast and so responsive. And what he did is in the demo, he actually has it hooked into Lua for the next configuration syntax. And he was able to make the window manager play Pong. And so that was really entertaining also just to see all that work. And with Lua, basically you're gonna have this ultimate layer of customability and extensions without having to have like a specific language. Because it's Lua, you can basically do anything, and it looks really cool. So I'm excited to see all that come out. Next up, we had Ryan Hughes, and Ryan was talking about how Omarchy has evolved over time. And so it started out with just some shell scripts from DHH, but since then it's grown. Now it's got its own package mirrors, it's got its own release channels. So it's got like the stable release, and it's got the more bleeding edge releases. And they've done some things over time, like they used to have chaotic R and things like that, and they moved on to new things. And so he was talking about all the evolution, and there was this interesting thread too of like, what makes a distribution? Because the Linux gatekeepers are like, oh, Omarchy is not a distribution, da da da. But it's like, actually, what makes a distribution, right? And it's like, well, you have this core OS, and you have these customizations and these preferences on top, and these way to build packages and things like that. And Omarchy certainly stands on its own now, and it has this great ISO pipeline so that they can just pump out these new ISOs with all these updates, and you just plug and install, and you can do it fully offline, very featureful. And again, if you haven't seen how to do that, check my video out. It will help guide you. However, it's so easy to install, you don't actually need to watch my video, but it might be fun. If you like this video, you might like that one. And following Ryan, we actually had a talk that was probably my most surprising talk in terms of I didn't really know what to expect. And it turned out to be one of my favorites, which was Spencer Bull from Dell. So Spencer had brought some XPS 14s and XPS 16s. And if you're not aware, they totally redesigned them this year. And so they basically look like MacBooks. And so they're very well crafted. They're very thin. They're just really high level of craftsmanship. And they also have Intel's Panther Lake, and they are just destroying our old AMD laptops and battery. And so these things can last like just 40 hours of playing like YouTube videos and stuff. It's ridiculous. And so they sip power, and you have no worries about battery life. So they are beating MacBooks at this point, all sorts of things. And Panther Lake performs really well. And so in the past, I've always recommended don't buy an Intel laptop. This year, I'm changing that recommendation. Intel is for real with the Panther Lake chips. And not only could we play with them there, which was really cool, but he talked a lot about the journey. And so Dell has always been a Linux supporter, and you can kind of go back even, 5-10 years ago. They had the XPS Developers Edition with Ubuntu preloaded and all that. Well, now you can just get one of these XPS 14s or XPS 16s. Make sure they're the 2026 edition, but they will work out of the box on Omarchy 3.5 and above. And so there's some tweaks in there. So there's an Intel power driver, and the touchpad works great. And we actually demoed the webcam together because I was curious about that, because normally when I look at laptops and I do these Linux reviews for the laptops, I look at the webcam, but I usually don't even talk about that much because I'm just kind of disappointed. However, on this one, the webcam looks awesome. It looks very high quality. Like I could probably shoot a YouTube video using the XPS 14 webcam that I was looking at. And so he's worked on all this to make sure that all those drivers are integrated, and they're getting integrated upstream so that if you ran other distros too, you'd be able to do it. But it's kind of the star of the show, and there's a lot of tweets going on right now. People are buying these things from the conference. They're super popular, and DHH had one too, and Primagen had one, and TJ had one. And so everybody's running these now, and I really like them. And I'm kind of on the fence about my X1 Carbon now. So I have a ThinkPad X1 Carbon, and I like it. It's the last generation. But if I could get something with slightly more horsepower, I'm hoping I could actually like edit my videos on it. So that's where the XPS 14 is interesting. The only thing that I really like about the ThinkPad is that it's been very durable. So I've shoved it in my backpack and I've dropped it and all that, and it doesn't break. But the XPS 14, like I wouldn't drop it from like 5 feet high because it is like that aluminum design, which could dent. So it's not durable, but you can't be probably outright super abusive to it the way you could a ThinkPad in some respects. And so if I picked up the Dell XPS 14, it'd probably be like my pretty laptop, right? It's like the one I want to go and show off or whatever. And then I'll probably keep the ThinkPad for like, I'm shoving this under 25 books, like that's probably what I do. And then closing out the show, we had the Primagen. I also got to meet him in person, and he was super nice and approachable. We got to talk a little bit about YouTube, and he gave me some advice, and he was just so friendly, and his talk was great. And he was just talking about his life and how he's had these experiences that was like, wait a minute, maybe I should take a second look and look at things a little differently. And it's a very deep talk, and I'm not gonna, basically regurgitate it here in a very poor manner. Definitely check it out on the YouTube stream that I'll link below. But it was really touching and just kind of gives you a new perspective. And he really hit on this idea that like a lot of people are afraid of AI right now, especially software developers. And you don't have to be afraid, and everything's going to be okay. And it was a really touching talk, and it heartfelt. And so it always is when he does these kind of events. But really enjoyed that one also. Also, not a speaker, but it was super awesome. I got to meet NeetCode. And so if you're not familiar with NeetCode, he has a great YouTube channel. I'll link that below. It helped me get a job in tech. And so whenever you go to get a job in like big tech, they're going to do LeetCode, and they're going to have all these algorithms and stuff that you're basically expected to know. And his videos are so approachable, and he explains them so well. He just has a very unique gift. And so I ran into him there, and he was just super chill. We were able to hang out and just talk about all sorts of things. And it was kind of like surreal, right? Like I'm sitting here talking to NeetCode. That's crazy. And he was so friendly, and so shout outs. It was so good to meet you also. In terms of swag, they gave us these awesome shirts. So super happy to get one of these because you can't really ever get one again. And if you weren't there, you might not want one or whatever. But for me, this is really going to mean something just in terms of like, yeah, I was there at the first Omacon, and I'll always remember it just because the people and the talks and the whole thing was just amazingly well done. And then I also got some stickers, which I really like, and a poster. And so I'm going to go ahead and frame that and hang it up also. And so for the rest of the weekend, I got to hang around New York. I got to go to Radio City and see La La Land, which was surprisingly good. But I also found another Google store there, and there was actually a lot of customers there. And so people were in the Google store and buying phones and all that. And it was a really nice setup. It's by like Chelsea Market. And so I checked that out, and that was a big change from Boston. And then also, I walked by the Microsoft store several times on Fifth Avenue, and almost nobody is going there. Like, it was empty almost all the time. And then the one time I walked in, like, we played with the laptops and the Surface laptops and all that. And it was hilarious because it was just us and one other guy. And the other customer was just yelling at them like, you guys really ruined the OS with all this AI stuff. And so I guess that's on brand, right? Like, there's one angry person like, Microsoft Copilot ruined my life. And then there was us just filming it basically because I just wanted to say I went there and check it out. And then the Apple Cube on Fifth Avenue, I went there too, and that place was packed. So yeah, kind of like a Google, Apple, definitely super busy. Microsoft, not busy, which makes sense because they have no reasonable offering at this point. They're very far behind. And so overall, it was just a great experience, and the people really made it special. And so I was able to meet and talk and collaborate with so many people. And that's something that can't be understated because, like, you and I are maybe alone in rooms thousands of miles away right now. And being there in person and just getting to see people and understand what they're thinking and sort of have that high bandwidth communication versus like that online, chunk communication. It was just so different and energizing, and you could really understand people and what they were looking for and their intentions, and everybody had a very positive outlook on things where it was a bunch of people building tomorrow. And that's what I really took away from it. And so I have a ton of energy from it. And I also have a ton of hope just because these people, again, they want to build something new, and they're not being different just to be different, but just because they're naturally creative and they're naturally builders and they're naturally doing things. And so sometimes their needs are different. It's like, yeah, not everything in the world has to fit into your MacBook Air. Like, there are lots of different scenarios out there, and you don't have to look exactly the same as everybody else. We can all have our own style and our own flavor, and we can all collaborate together to make something even bigger together. And so I really enjoyed the whole thing, and it was just something I didn't expect in terms of, like, if you've ever gone to a conference and you go solo, well, what happens is like sometimes there's groups of people and they're like cliques or whatever, and you have to try and find somebody who will talk to you maybe so you don't just sit there alone the whole time. And then maybe you have to like follow the group around and like, eventually you're like, am I being creepy or do they like me? I don't know. And there was none of that here. Like, I just walked right up to the Primagen. I'm like, hey, Prime, I'm Steve. He's like, hey, Steve. And he shook my hand and we just hung out and talked. And then I went up to people who weren't Primagen. And they were also like, oh yeah, hey, you like Linux? Cool, I like Linux. What do you do? And some people didn't even have Linux laptops. And they were still like, hey, yeah, cool, what do you do? And some people were artists and people making themes and just there's this whole ecosystem of like all these different projects. Some people had robots. Some people were big into 3D printers. It was just a vast array of different people. And they were all so friendly and cool. And I must have met like 100 different people there. And so I would recommend, if you ever get the chance to go to something like this, definitely go, because I think it made a change in my life permanently. And that's about the highest compliment I could pay to any conference, and certainly this one was just the top of my list. So let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. If you enjoy content like this, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps the channel. But otherwise, I'll catch you in the next one. Later.